Tom Stevens. Every Sunday, 5 to 7, watching a little PGA Championship golf on CBS right now. What a bad break from Victor Hovland. He's in it, and he's in the bunker, and then he doesn't get out of the bunker on his second shot.
He embeds it.
It's embedded. I think he gets a drop there, but it didn't look like that hard of a shot.
I was going to say that was not unfortunate. That was a horrible swing.
Well, when I looked at it, they were both offline. Hovland was in the bunker, and Koepka, who's the leader by one, they're both playing 15. Koepka's in the rough, and I thought Hovland has the advantage here. He has a clean lie, and then he just hits the most atrocious shot you'll see. But that's what the major championships do to people.
Yeah, like he genuinely. He didn't almost whiff, but like
it looked like you or me.
Bladed it. Yeah,
I mean,
I am horrible out of the.
I hate being out of the bunker as well, and you'd think you're safe taking a 9. He took a 9 iron, so you'd think he's going to get out easily. It wasn't a horrible lie, but that was a whiff. So you feel bad for a guy, Victor Hovland, who really had a chance, and now Koepka, the door is open for him to win. I believe this would be his 5th major if he wins today. And now you have the whole debate, LIV versus the PGA Tour. And obviously, Koepka is still one of the best golfers in the world, but you never hear about him because he doesn't play on the PGA Tour anymore. So we'll see how it ends up. I'm still rooting for a playoff. Scheffler's 3-back playing 17, so it's going to be tough for – I guess he has the advantage. He can get in the clubhouse and post a score. And you never know. Somebody could go Phil Mickelson and just hook it into the gallery.
Yeah, having the score up on the board in the clubhouse is always something you want to, even if you're a couple of shots back in a major championship, that's not a bad thing. Michael Block is a story in the PGA tournament.
Yeah,
too.
He's a PGA pro, and he's had a great weekend. He had a hole-in-one today.
Yeah, he flew it into the hole. No bounce, just straight into the hole. 151 yards. 14, I think it was.
Yeah.
I don't remember the whole number.
I don't know what the record is for a PGA tour or a pro. I mean, a guy who's a professional who doesn't play a lot of golf, who just plays in these things because it's the PGA. I don't know what the record is, but he said his goal was for even par, and he's +1. So this is pretty good.
He's +1, but he just put an approach shot on 17 or 18. About 60 people deep in the gallery on the left-hand side.
They say if he finishes, I believe he has to finish top 20 to be invited back next year. And top 4 to be in the Masters. So it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
No, and he's more than likely going to bogey this and drop to +2, and he may even fall back to +3. If he falls to +3, he's out of the top 20.
Koepka's in command. That was not that bad of a lie, and he's going to be on the green easily. In fact, he's going to be really close to the hole. He's going to have a 3-footer, and then he's going to tap in that probably for a birdie. And now he's probably won the PGA Championship. I mean, he's going to be through 16 holes, Mike.
There's
and Hovland
2 holes to play. John Van de Velde comes to mind.
That's right. So you're saying there's a chance. Let's get to the starting gate and see what's on the docket for today's show. Mike Belby and the starting gate every week around this time.
Well, since it's the starting gate, and we decided to call this segment the starting gate because of the Kentucky Derby, Preakness, and Belmont Stakes. National Treasure held off a hard-charging Blazing Sevens to win the 148th running of the Preakness Stakes at Pimlico Racecourse in Baltimore.
I forgot the Preakness was yesterday.
Yep. Kentucky Derby winner Mage finished 3rd after going off as the favorite. No Triple Crown winner for the 5th straight year. Justify was the last one to win it back in 2018. And another kind of a mess of a day as far as horse racing goes, though. Bob Baffert picks up his 8th win in the Preakness. First time he's been able to run a Triple Crown race since he was suspended for a lot of stuff. I'm not going to get into it.
Yeah, he's had a checkered career, especially lately over the last 3 or 4 years.
But it was a rough day for him earlier in the pre-card. One of his horses had a leg injury and had to be put down. So
that's happening on a regular basis. It feels like there's something wrong. You just euthanize them. And I understand when there's not a lot they can do. I've talked to vets about this, and they have told me it's sad, and that's what the racing industry is. But you don't have a lot of choice. You euthanize them.
No, after taking the series at Purdue, Husker baseball finishes the regular season 31-21-1. They're going to be the 4th seed in the Big Ten tournament. They will take on Rutgers Wednesday afternoon at 2. Nebraska broke the record for home runs in a season with 2 bombs on Saturday, bringing their season total to 95. That broke the record of 93 set in 1985. That was done in 69 games, though, this year. They've only played 53. Max Anderson broke the home run record in the Big Ten Conference all time for most home runs in conference play. He hit his 15th yesterday in conference. He's got 21 overall to lead Nebraska. Nebraska's softball is down in Stillwater, and they are taking on Oklahoma State, a game that they will need to win in order to play Oklahoma State again. And I'm trying.
So even if they win, they have to play them again.
Exactly.
It's double elimination. I didn't realize that the Oklahoma State hadn't lost yet, but that makes sense. They're the 9th-ranked team in the country.
So it is in the middle of the 6th, Nebraska 2, Oklahoma State 1.
So you're saying there's a chance, Lloyd Christmas.
Brooke Andrews with a diving catch to snag a ball in shallow center.
Wow.
And Oklahoma State went down in order in the 6th.
It looked like it was over yesterday against Wichita State. There were 2 outs. They were down, I believe, 2 runs. Yep. And Nebraska came back to tie that game, go to extra innings. They win the game yesterday. So it would be a bit of a miracle finish, and then they would win the regional and move on to a super regional.
Yeah, that would be crazy.
That would be crazy. I mean, that's a long shot still, but they're up 2-1.
They're up 2-1 right now, and going to the bottom of the 6th. And if they win, they play the Cowgirls again, probably an hour after the end of
that would
this
be
game.
So big for Rhonda Rebel.
Oh, huge.
And Nebraska sports in general. Just not a lot has gone right over the last several years.
Speaking of baseball and softball, I'm going to go back to baseball real quick. Lance Harvell will join us at 5:25-ish, and we'll talk about Nebraska baseball headed into the Big Ten tournament with Lance. Always a fantastic guest.
Victor Hovland looks like he's out of it, by the way. Just got a double bogey on 16. So he is now at 6 under par, commanding lead for Koepka, who's about to make birdie on 16.
Yeah, it'll be a 4-shot lead.
That'll be a huge lead, and looks like it'll be over.
Bellevue West quarterback Daniel Kalen decommitted from Missouri on Friday and then committed to Nebraska yesterday. Great job by Matt Rule and his staff to get Kalen after losing out on Dylan Raiola. And I'm on the fence with the commitment videos. I get it. Some are really cool. Some are awful. Daniel Kalen's is probably one of the best.
Do you like the coming home stuff?
Yeah, that was cool.
Pretty cool. I wouldn't mind seeing a little video of highlights, though, in there.
True.
Mix in some highlights. I like the commitment video. Give me some highlights.
Yeah, that would be kind of neat. Big shout out to my alma mater, Waverly. The boys track team won its first ever state title this year. The girls team had a great showing as well. They came in 3rd. And then I want to send a big shout out and congratulations to the Lincoln East Spartan baseball team. They became the first Lincoln High School to win a Class A state baseball title since 1977 when Southeast did it.
When was the last state championship in anything for a Lincoln school? Yeah, football. I mean, the big 3. Football, baseball, basketball had to be recent. Northeast
Southeast won title after title.
Right, under Mazursky, but that was back in the 90s.
Yeah, I don't pay enough attention to high school sports to know how many.
I know Lincoln High won a basketball championship in the early 2000s. I think it's been a while. And then, of course, Northeast went on a run of several state championships. In the big 3, I'm just wondering about the last state championship. That's a big deal. Congratulations to East.
Yeah, it was a heck of a game. I was fortunate enough to be on the call here on 93.7 The Ticket. 1 out, bottom of the 7th of a tie game at 2, and center found a shallow pop fly. Center fielder from Lincoln East throws out a Millard West runner at the plate. So the double play ends the 7th. They go into the 10th and wind up winning it on a long fly ball to right field that bounced off the right fielder's mitt.
Very cool.
So congrats to Lincoln East. In the NHL, Dallas and Vegas are facing off for the Western Conference Finals. Vegas leads the game, or led the series 2-1. And I'll get an update on the score of their game. It should be wrapping up here shortly, game 2 there. And then in the East, it's Florida and Carolina. Panthers lead that series 2-0 in the NBA. In the West, it looks like the Lakers' playoff run will come to an end as they trail Denver 3-rip and have not really looked like they belong on the same court with them.
They should have won either game 1 or game 2 and let especially game 1 slip away.
Yeah.
And Denver at times looked lost. I thought LeBron played pretty well. He missed the dunk. He was going up for a fancy two-handed reverse dunk, and he fumbled it out of bounds. It really hurt the Lakers. I mean, he's done some things in this series that you go, that is not LeBron James.
Yeah.
I don't know who that guy is, but that's not LeBron James. And you realize he's getting to be older. I mean, and that happened to Jordan
38.
even. I mean, he's 38 years old, and you start to see that slip at that age. He's still a really good basketball player and certainly one of the best in the world, but it's not very sexy thinking Denver versus the Heat right now. And
yeah, I know the Heat are up 2-0 and they're playing at home tonight against your Celtics, but I don't know, man.
You think the Celtics will come back?
I think
the Celtics are actually favored in this game, which is
by 4.5. The line just moved up.
Surprising to me that they're favored. I don't think they're going to come back and win that series, and maybe they will, but it's still, even if that happens, it's Boston and Denver. And Denver has been, maybe the second best, third best team in the entire NBA all season long. Milwaukee was really the favorite to win the championship, and they bowed out in the first round to the Heat.
Yeah.
So that was surprising. But the Nuggets are fun to watch, and Nikola Jokic, if you've not watched a lot of NBA basketball, and I know a lot of people just don't like it, that's fine. Jokic is fun to watch. He's a 7'2" point guard. The guy is, he had a stat line the other night that was like, the game wasn't over, but it was like 24 points, 17 rebounds, 12 assists. And it's just, he covers every column. He's the most unselfish player I've seen in a while for a superstar. And, it looks like Denver is now the commanding favorite to win the NBA title.
Yeah, and I think when Milwaukee went out, that was kind of where I was leaning, as that Denver was just going to probably have a cakewalk, and didn't turn out that way. A couple of the series were a little probably more difficult than what people were anticipating, but, man, they are just absolutely rolling now. I think they'll dispose of the Lakers in 4, and then we'll see. We'll see if Boston can come back. Big game tonight. What is it, 7:30 tonight.
7:30 tonight. And I'll be watching. Got a graduation party to go to, but then I'll come home and watch the rest of it.
Nice.
Maybe we should start a little bit with golf, because we're going to talk baseball with Lance Harvell.
Yeah.
In about 10 minutes, we'll talk a little Husker baseball, and we'll obviously follow what's going on with Husker softball.
Yep.
Up 2-1 over Oklahoma State. That's a big deal. Number 9 team in the country. Nebraska has survived after kind of blowing it in one game against Wichita State. They really should have won the game that they had in hand, and then they lost it, but then they backs against the wall. They're going to lose, and then they beat Wichita State. And now they're ahead of Oklahoma State. They would have to win 2 to win that regional. So it's a long shot still for Nebraska, but we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll talk a little Husker baseball. But I do want to talk a little bit about the LIV Tour versus the PGA Tour, because you're going to have Koepka's wrapped it up. This is over. Koepka is going to win the PGA. He's got a 4-shot lead going to 17. He could take a wedge and win the tournament right now, and probably will take 7-iron or something ridiculously safe to win the PGA at a very difficult venue in Oak Hill. We talked to the best golfer possibly in Nebraska golf history, and Jim White last week, and he said he played the 2008 senior championship at Oak Hill and didn't make the cut, and played fairly well at times. The winner, he said, was Kenny Perry. This is the senior championship, and he said he was +7.
Yeah,
he was +7. Koepka, I know it's a different deal, PGA versus the senior tour, but Koepka is blowing this course away. He's -10. He's going to win by 4 shots probably. And now you have the whole thing. I think a lot of people didn't want to see Koepka win or Bryson DeChambeau win because they're on the LIV Tour and you're a PGA Tour fan. And now you're going to have the conversation. Nobody watches the LIV Tour. But let's be honest. I don't watch it. I think you have to get to YouTube TV to watch any of it. And the team deal and 54 holes and all the stuff they do seems a little silly. And the money's ridiculous, fine. But nobody cares. But they do care when you're on the LIV Tour and you come win the PGA Tour, I think. I think it's going to create a little rivalry between the tours. There already is that. Because Phil left to go to the LIV Tour, and we all know it probably to pay gambling debts,
Yeah.
And a lot of these guys that were, in some cases, Sergio, his best days are behind him. He joins the Live Tour and he gets a boatload of money. All these guys that are getting all the money, there's a handful of guys that can win major championships from the Live Tour. Obviously, Koepka's one. Dustin Johnson's another. Bryson DeChambeau. But there's not very many guys. Even Phil. I mean, Phil wasn't going to win. He did pretty well at the Masters, but he's probably not going to win another championship, another golf tournament outside the Live Tour. Do you see this as something that will create a little rivalry between the two tours? Or am I reaching on this one?
I think you're reaching because there's no comparison. It's like comparing the top level of Olympic wrestling,
right?
Where Greco-Roman knuckle wrestling that is an Olympic sport, and comparing it with the WWE.
Well, maybe so, but
it's an exhibition.
What
it's
if you have
54-hole exhibition?
Okay.
To me, it's not even. I don't think it's a comparison at all. I think the PGA Tour is real golf, and I think that the Live Tour is simply an exhibition to let a bunch of guys. And I'm not going to knock the guys that went to the Live Tour. Do what you want to do, make the money. But at the same time, I grew up idolizing Jack Nicklaus. Loved the rivalry between him and Arnie, and enjoyed watching how he just dominated. Same with Tiger. The PGA Tour is where I grew up. It's where I'm a fan. I think the Live Tour is a joke, and I hate everybody that plays on the Live Tour.
But that joke just beat you.
So?
It's kind of like, I don't know, maybe this is a bad comparison. Like
you
have a G League team, but you have a G League team beating the Lakers for an NBA championship.
Totally different. You're talking a team
sport versus individual.
And this is I'm talking that tour itself is a joke.
Of course it's a joke. Nobody watches
it. Koepka, Sergio, maybe, and Cam Smith and Dustin Johnson, the guys that you mentioned, Bryson DeChambeau, those guys are still great golfers. They will still win majors like Koepka's going to today. Great. But at the end of the day, who's going to watch him play next week or the week after the next Live event?
Nobody watches. Nobody watches it.
No one cares.
And I think if the PGA had its druthers, they wouldn't allow these guys to play in championships at all.
And I don't think they should be allowed. I'm on
well, obviously they're good enough. Koepka's good enough.
They're all good. I'm not saying they're not good enough. I'm saying if you're gonna try to screw over the PGA Tour, and according to Phil, he's gonna make sure everybody gets held accountable. That's his big quote after he fumbled the entire tournament away and played his normal crappy golf. It's like Phil thinks it's up to him to hold people accountable. I've never liked Phil. I still don't like him. I like him even less now.
If you get a chance to watch Full Swing, it's about the PGA Tour, and you've watched it, and I've watched it. I think there's some really good stories. Some of it is about the Live Tour versus the regular tour. I can't begrudge a guy who, maybe his entire PGA career has made $10 million, and just joining the Live Tour, they're going to give him $20 million, and they did. The Saudis obviously have a ton of money. Yeah. They print it because they dominate the world oil production. We know that. I can't begrudge a guy, even a guy that's really rich, like, Dustin Johnson or Koepka or any of these guys that did it, or Phil. Phil, again, probably did it because he was in debt.
You'll say he didn't get a check. He just didn't have to write one.
It's hard for me to blame those guys for joining that tour.
Again, I'm not going to anybody that guys that it's always funny to me in a workplace where somebody finds out that somebody makes more money than them and they go in and demand more money and et cetera. It's like, well, you had an opportunity to work your own deal and ask for more money when you were hired. Right. You didn't do it. Why are you mad at that person? Because they did. You know what, though? A lot of these PGA Tour players should thank the Live guys because now they're making more money because of the Live Tour. Yeah, and that's a valid point. It doesn't mean I got to like the Live Tour, and I hope it fails miserably. It will. I mean, I just don't see they can keep throwing money at it because they've got all the money that they ever could want. I just don't see how anybody's ever going to watch it. Yeah. But if you want to turn it into real golf and real tournaments, then maybe you might have something. Yeah. All right. So there's our golf talk for maybe the rest of the year. Who knows? We'll probably talk a little around Father's Day. We'll talk about the U.S. Open. That'll be happening. Hey, if Tiger ever... And we're big golf fans. We're not going to apologize necessarily for talking about golf. No. We love golf. And let's face it, there's not a lot going on in the world of sports. You got the NBA winding down.
You've got no football. You've got really nothing other than Major League Baseball, and that Major League Baseball is going to be there until October. We'll talk a little bit about that eventually. But my Royals, I doubt that we'll talk a ton of Royals baseball on this show just because they're not having a great year. If they were, I'd be talking about it every week. I wouldn't shut up about it.
Hey, I'm not talking about my Texas Rangers every week, so you're welcome.
Well, they're having a nice year.
I know, and I don't know why.
Yeah,
they're normally horrible.
Well, that's sports. Nebraska baseball has had, let's face it hasn't been a spectacular year, but it's been a pretty good 2 weeks. They set the home run record. They've won 5 of their last 6. Probably should have swept Purdue. They go into the Big Ten tournament relatively hot. They're a 4 seed. They'll play Rutgers on Wednesday at 2:00. So, they're going to have to, let's face it, they're going to have to win the Big Ten championship at Schwab Field to get into the NCAA tournament. But it's not like they're playing anybody that is, in the SEC. They're playing, Maryland's good. Iowa's good. There's some good teams, but Nebraska's also good. They're maybe the best offense in the Big Ten. It's possible they could win that tournament. Let's talk a little Husker baseball. Lance Harvell, Nebraska assistant baseball coach, always entertaining, always fun. We'll talk to him next. He's Mike Melby. I'm Tom Stevens. It's Husker Rewind.
It's May, and that means the school year is almost over and summer road trips are on the horizon. Stop telling yourself you'll upgrade your car someday and do it now. Mullen Motors lot is full of great vehicles to take home so you don't have to worry about your current car barely surviving another road trip. Come check out their lot just north of 48th and Layton and find your next ride. Summer road trips are just around the corner. Mullen Motors.
No taglines, just quality vehicles. Mullen Motors.
Hey, moms and dads, bring the whole crew to a Salt Dogs baseball game and unleash the fun. Visit Haymarket Park all summer for fireworks Fridays, souvenir Saturdays, Sunday family fun days, and more. With 50 home games, even weekdays can be unforgettable. Planning an event? Make it a home run with group discounts. When you need an outing the whole family will enjoy, unleash the fun with the Salt Dogs. Call 402-474-2255 or visit saltdogs.com for tickets.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it twice a day.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it in the morning and before dinner.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it, and share it with my doctor. Nearly 1 in 2 U.S. adults have high blood pressure. That's why it's important to self-monitor your blood pressure in 4 easy-to-remember steps. It starts with a monitor.
Now that I know my blood pressure numbers, I talked with my doctor. We're getting those numbers down.
Get it, slip it, cuff it, check it. Talk to doctor now and share it.
Be next to talk to your doctor about your blood pressure numbers. Get down with your blood pressure. Self-monitoring is power. Learn more at manageyourbp.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the American Heart Association, and the American Medical Association, in partnership with the Office of Minority Health and Health Resources and Services Administration.
Don't let biased algorithms or degree screens or exclusive professional networks or stereotypes. Don't let anything keep you from discovering the half of the workforce who are stars. Workers skilled through alternative routes rather than a bachelor's degree. It's time to tear the paper ceiling and see the stars beyond it. Find out how you can make stars part of your talent strategy at tearthepaperceiling.org. Brought to you by Opportunity at Work and the Ad Council.
Into the building for the first time after the shooting. It was crippling, but it had to be preserved.
In response to the Pulse nightclub shooting that affected the LGBTQ community, Barbara Poma, owner of Pulse, founded the One Pulse Foundation to honor Pulse victims and survivors.
If you're an ally of this community, speak out. There are more of us together than apart. It is the power of love in its rawest form.
Join the fight for LGBTQ acceptance. Learn how at lovehasnolabels.com. Brought to you by Love Has No Labels and the Ad Council.
Neil Armstrong waited 6 hours and 39 minutes to step onto the surface of the moon. Jackie Robinson waited 20 months to play his first game with the Brooklyn Dodgers. And even DiCaprio had to wait 22 years to win an Oscar. You can wait until your destination. Don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
This is the Sunday Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back. Sunday Husker Rewind. Tom Stevens and Mike Melby. It's been a good weekend for Nebraska baseball. Actually, the last 2 weekends, they've won 5 or 6. They beat Purdue 2 out of 3. They get the 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament, which will start for Nebraska on Wednesday, 2 o'clock, as they take on the 5 seed Rutgers. We welcome in the assistant baseball coach, Lance Harvell. You set the home run record. Are you taking all the credit for that, Lance?
Yeah, like I always do. All credit.
But that is exciting. I mean, you've set some offensive records this year with this team. I mean, obviously not you, the team has, but that's got to be fun to watch when you just see long ball after long ball go out and you don't have to orchestrate as much.
Yeah, it makes my job a little bit easier. You don't have to be as creative when the ball is jumping off the bat the way that it has this year with these guys. But no, I mean, yeah, it's awesome to set those records and be able to do that kind of stuff. But obviously, the team aspect of it is the biggest thing. And while all that stuff is nice to have a little feather in your cap, I know I speak for all of our players and coaches, and we'd like to go take care of business in Omaha and go punch our ticket.
Well, and that's the thing. Lance Harvell joining us here on Husker Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket. It's all about controlling your own destiny. And bottom line is you do that now. You come in as a 4 seed. If you get by Rutgers, you're probably looking at Maryland. Who's the team that you're probably going to need to beat to get the championship in the tournament? Maryland. I don't know what else you can ask for. Just an opportunity. You guys have got it. What's the mindset going in? Is it just leave it all on the field, or is there anything else going on?
No, that's exactly it. And thankfully that for me, and I know several of our coaches on the staff, we've all been part of teams that have gone and won some conference championships. So we feel like we've got the blueprint there with the experience and what needs to happen. And yeah, you just kind of have to have that mindset that, today is the most important day, and you can't worry about setting up pitching or leaving anything in the tank or, anything like that, because, the most important thing is to win the day, and you'll figure it out the next day. So it's whatever you have to do to win that game. And so for us, it really it comes down to just our mindset. I mean, the talent that we have is as good as anybody that we're going to, match up against. And if we come out with the right mindset, that we're ready to set the tone, from the word go, and kind of play with our hair on fire. And we've been pretty good when we've done that. And we haven't been when we haven't. So it's, it just kind of comes down to that, kind of that aggressive, that competitive mindset going into each and every game.
Key to success: light your hair on fire.
That's
I like
right.
it.
Yeah,
that's it.
Well, he has plenty of hair. Nebraska had a solid season in the conference. They're 15-9. They're, Maryland. We talk about Maryland being the best team of the conference, but they were 17-7. I mean, it wasn't like Nebraska was too far out of first place. You had a pretty good conference season. Was it the midweek games that maybe, do you allow yourself to look back on the season and think, man, we need to clean up the midweek? Is that how you think about it, or you just don't even think about it going into the tournament?
Well, you can't. I mean, yes, of course you do think about it. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. You do sit back and you kind of can play the hindsight game, and you'll drive yourself crazy doing it. So you can't spend too much time dwelling on it, because there's a task at hand right now, and none of that means anything right now, because the opportunity that you have in front of you to go get into a regional is to go win this tournament. And but yeah, you do kind of when the regular season kind of wraps up there, you kind of look back and you say, okay, 31-21-1, what, and you look at the games that maybe were kind of those 50-50 games that could have gone either way. And obviously the midweek games were the difference for us, because really in conference play, we took care of business. We feel like we played pretty well at a pretty high level in conference. I think we won 6 of our 8 series, and so I think most years, anybody would take that, and you have a couple of those kind of swing games, and it's a totally different story. Maybe maybe 2 or 3 more games go your way, and you're looking at being conference champs, and so the midweeks though, yeah, for sure, came back to bite us, and again, just goes back to our mindset going into the game, and so whether it's a non-conference game, conference game, whoever the opponent was, whatever the setting was, our guys being in that right frame of mind is a different. That's on anything, and so we've got to make sure we're there on Wednesday when we take on Rutgers.
One of the bigger stories I think that came out of yesterday's game is Max Anderson. He breaks the Big Ten record for most home runs in conference play with 15. And I get it. The Big Ten's not the SEC or the Big 12 in baseball, but to break a record for the conference for home runs says a lot. We all know that Max isn't necessarily the biggest, loudest, most vocal guy and the guy that's going to scream and yell and get on top of the dugout. He just goes about his business. But what has it been like coaching him for the 3 years that he's been here? As you can probably guess, I think all of us are. He's playing his final games as a Husker. He's going to wind up being drafted this coming year. And what's it been like coaching Max Anderson?
Yeah, he's been great. I mean, it's people. I've kind of said it for years now, and people have asked me whether it's you guys or anybody else, pro scouts, doesn't matter. I tell everybody the same thing, and it's the truth. I mean, I've kind of just stayed out of his way. Like, you get a player like that that's as naturally gifted as he is, and there's not a whole lot of coaching that really has to be done, believe it or not. So it's really, with him, was more about making sure he was just kind of in that right frame of mind. And if Max showed up and had a smile on his face that day, then you knew you were good. And so, but yeah, he's not. He's wired a little bit different. He's not the guy that's just emotion dripping off him and stuff. He's very even keeled, and he's just a throwback player. I tell guys all the time, and especially pros, don't watch him do anything else. Like, he looks like an overgrown 7th grader. It's kind of the running joke on the team, and he's like, he's probably not going to pass the eye test, in his uniform, compared to, especially standing out there next to Bryce Matthews on the field. Don't watch him take BT. Don't watch him. But when the lights come on, and when the game starts and he steps in that batter's box, now start to bear down, because he's that this kind of an old school throwback guy that he was just born to hit a baseball, and he does it really, really, really well. And so the more I can stay out of his way and the less I do, the better for him. I tell programs all the time, he might have been born in the wrong era. I mean, he looks like a guy that should have been playing back in the 20s and 30s, where he's playing baseball professionally in the spring and the summer and working in a butcher shop, in the fall and the winter. That's what he looks like.
He's an overgrown 7th grader. I love that. Max Anderson. And you've told me for years, you tried to stay out of his way.
It's not a joke. That's the God's honest truth.
But you've got to take some credit, Coach. I mean, this is one of the best offensive teams in the Big Ten and one of the best offensive teams in the country. And while Max has always been able to hit the ball, Bryce has struggled from time to time, and now he looks to be a future pro along with Max. They'll both play, I think, in the major leagues. What did you say over time with Bryce? Because he has struggled in the past.
Well, it's not any one thing, and it's not anything that specifically that I said or I mean, it's a, it is a total team effort. I mean, so Coach Bolt, Coach Marcuzzo, myself, like, we all kind of tag team the hitters, and then everybody on our staff has, influence and input in our guys because they're around all the time. So whether it's, they're by Coach Childress or Coach Christie or, Coach Seco or strength coach, whoever it may be, everybody's having input into these guys, and all of us are kind of cut from the same cloth and kind of have similar backgrounds and kind of wired the same. And so they're getting that consistent message from everybody. And I think just over time, natural development, I mean, take the physical tools and the talent and all that stuff. none of that stuff happens if these guys don't, kind of mature in their mindset, their perspective on things and all that. And for those two guys specifically, you can just see that, like, they've played a lot of baseball. There's really nothing that they haven't seen on a baseball field at this point. And the game is just moving in slow motion for them. And that's, the natural progression of things. And when you see those jumps, in production or just the consistency of it, it's usually that, and guys get to their junior year. Sometimes it happens a little earlier, sometimes it happens a little later, but you can just kind of tell sometimes when it clicks for guys, and things just kind of slow down, and the game's not moving quite as fast. They've seen it all, they've done it all. I specifically with Max, but this goes for Bryce too. A lot of times, if you're watching their at bats, they don't really get fooled a whole lot, and if you're the other team or if you're the other pitcher, I kind of laugh sometimes if those guys get fooled and it's not for strike three. I kind of chuckle to myself over at third base, because I'm like, y'all messed up, because that was your one shot. That was your that was your time to fool them, and you didn't do it to get them out. And if they still have life in that batter's box, more often than not this year, something good has happened. And so it really just credits those guys and just their maturity and them going out and playing, like, just honing their craft, whether that's in fall ball or the spring, going out and playing summer ball. They've gone out and done it. They've put in the work, and they have bought into the coaching and the approach and the mentality and all that stuff. And everyone just kind of sees the result. You get to show up, buy your ticket, and sit down and watch those guys for 3 hours, in a game. And there's so much that went into that time for those guys and all of our guys that, like you mentioned earlier, for the fans, for me too, it's been fun to just kind of sit and watch them go.
Yeah. Nice. Lance Harvell, Nebraska assistant baseball coach, joining us here on 93.7 The Ticket, Husker Rewind. Coach, give us the scout on Rutgers. How do you attack these guys?
Well, I think, obviously not having seen them this year, we'll kind of dig into their numbers and their personnel. I haven't had a chance to do that yet. I'll kind of do that over the next 2 days, but I think really right now, I hate to kind of give you the boring coach answer, but I think it's really more about what we do, as opposed to what Rutgers does. And if we can go out and kind of execute our game plan and play our game, then I like our chance, whether it's Rutgers, whether it's Maryland, whether it's Vanderbilt, LSU, whoever. I think we got a chance to beat anybody in the country. I really do. I really believe that. And so I think it's really kind of more about us at this point, and what we, are kind of not only what we want to do, but what we're willing to do, and if we can kind of have that mindset, just like I said earlier, like, play like there is no tomorrow, and today, just go win today. And you take those small steps, those little bites, during the game, and you find those competitive moments, and you embrace those competitive moments, and you run towards them. That's kind of the makeup of how to go win a conference tournament.
What is the message to the team? Is it always the same, or does it change when you get into the postseason, Coach?
No, nothing. I don't think anything changes as far as what our message to the guys has been and will be. It's go play fast, hard, and loose. That's kind of our motto, and again, when we do that, we're really good. We're tough to beat, and we have team at bats. I think people have kind of seen that more. We've played that style a little bit more of like team baseball, especially offensively, with maybe some of the small ball that we've been doing that hasn't been as much a part of the offense consistently through the year, has been a little bit more consistent here recently. But just kind of maybe the only difference, not that it's something new that they haven't heard before, but really kind of preaching team baseball and the team approach and doing what it takes. I kind of think of it now. when you look at Major League Baseball, during the regular season, everybody's trying to hit their home runs and strikeouts. Nobody really cares about that stuff, during the regular season. But as soon as playoff time comes around, all of a sudden you see those hitters anchoring down. They're not moving their feet. They're not jumping out of the way. They're taking their hit by pitch. They're doing what they're cutting their swing down to move a runner or, to just move the ball to get a runner in from third base or something like that. You start to see maybe some more small ball in playoff baseball, even at the major league level. And so that team aspect, that team approach, team baseball, complementary baseball, is something that really, all year, like we always preach it, but maybe that would be one thing to kind of point to that we really, really harped on a lot more here recently. And I think that's going to be a continued kind of recipe for success for us.
Coach, we'll talk to you after you win the Big Ten tournament. And then you're probably headed to Fayetteville and you'll win that regional. And then we'll talk more after that.
Sounds like you got it figured out. So I need to borrow that. I can borrow your crystal ball.
Well, I know you and Coach Bolt, and tenacious is one of the words I would describe you. He's a very competitive guy. You share that. And you can't always see it on the radio, but you know it when you meet him. And it's been fun having you on the show, and hopefully it's not over.
Well, in the words of Nuke LaLoosh, I love winning. You know what I'm saying? It's like better than losing.
That's
right. And I send my wife that text after every game when we win. I tell her, so I love winning.
Do you have a favorite? You have a favorite baseball quote of all time? Is that it?
Ooh, that's a great one. It would probably be from Bull Durham. I was brought up on Bull Durham. My parents really did right by me by exposing me to that movie at maybe an earlier age than I should have. I probably watched the made for TV version first though, but it would probably, I don't know what it would be, but it would probably be from that movie. Bull Durham is probably my all-time favorite baseball movie.
Yeah, that's probably mine as well. That might be mine.
Major League, a close second.
Yep.
Major League is classic, but I'll think of one for the next time.
Well, this isn't over. We're gonna have you back on if we can, for sure. Love having you, Coach. Thanks, Lance.
Yeah, guys.
He's the best. He's funny. He's fun, but I don't know that people know how much the guy likes to win. I mean, how competitive he is. He really likes to win.
Well, and to use some coach speak to describe that coach and Will Bolt, their personalities are, they don't necessarily love to win as much as they hate losing.
Yeah, they hate it. They hate it.
And the winning's good, but they hate losing.
I mean, I really think there's a chance. I mean, baseball is a sport of momentum. Think back to Ole Miss, the last team to make the NCAA tournament last year. The very last team selected for the tournament. They get hot, and I understand they're an SEC team, and they're all good in that conference. But I think back to the Arkansas regional a few years back, where Nebraska probably should have won that regional, and they were the #1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament that year.
Yep.
Baseball is a game of momentum, and Nebraska has a little momentum right now. They won 5 of the last 6. Probably should have swept Purdue this weekend.
Yep.
But I think there's a chance, and you never know. Sometimes the home crowd provides a little more pressure, or something. But you just play loose.
Yeah.
And
you know what they say though. It's a simple game. You throw the ball, you catch the ball, you hit the ball.
Yeah.
Sometimes you win. Sometimes you lose. Sometimes it rains.
Bull Durham. What a great movie.
Quick update from Stillwater. Nebraska's softball season comes to a conclusion at 36-22.
Man.
They give up 4 runs in the top of the 7th inning and fall 5-2 to the Cowgirls from Oklahoma State, who will now move on to the Super Regionals.
Koepka has won the PGA Championship at 9 under par by a couple of shots. So he wins his 5th. I think that's his 5th major. So he's probably not done winning majors. So and he was crying on the 18th hole. So good for him. But the whole Live versus PGA Tour, I'm sure that will start some sort of conversation. We already had it.
Best story though out of the PGA is Michael Block. Winds up finishing at +1.
He had a hole-in-one today. That was awesome.
And what a way to do a hole-in-one, man. Just fly it right in the hole.
They've had several interviews over the weekend with Michael Block. And I think it was Scott Van Pelt that interviewed him and said over under 2 IPAs. after this round because he and he goes, oh, that's by noon, or whatever time it was. He's an interesting character. He's a fun character and top 20 finish. So he'll be back at the 15th. PGA next year.
Yeah, tied for 15th.
All right, let's get to break and come back with more. It's Husker Rewind. Mike Melby and Tom Stevens back after this.
Too many people believe that chronic pain, allergies, or illness are permanent and something you're stuck with. Novotny Nutrition and Wellness has been proving that narrative wrong for 29 years and changing lives for the better in the process. Their team is trained in the newest, most advanced pain-relieving techniques and ways to deal with toxins, allergies, pollution, and emotion that make you ill. Call today for a free consultation at 531-254-5695 or go to novotnynutritionandwellness.com. Novotny Nutrition and Wellness, located at 7th and Superior.
When you were a kid, clubs were cool. Robotics club or space club and stuff like that. But what do adults get? Book clubs and quilting clubs? No, forget that. How about a margarita club? Get to Upside Bar and Lounge and join the best club in town. 10 flavors of margaritas like Maui Wowie, burnt pineapple, and mango tango. Try all 10 of them and receive your own souvenir margarita glass. Make it your new Monday night tradition. $4 margaritas and $4 taco baskets. Grab the crew and head on over. Monday nights or any night. Upside Bar and Lounge at 29th and Pine Lake.
Alexa, play 93.7 The Ticket.
Okay, playing 93.7 The Ticket.
Alexa, turn down the lights.
Dimming the lights.
Alexa, order a pizza. The big one. All the toppings.
Are you sure that's a good idea?
Alexa.
That's a lot of pizza for just one man.
Alexa, just do it. Stop judging me, just do it.
As you wish.
Thanks, Alexa. You're my best friend.
May 1st through 31st, enroll your eligible smart thermostat in the LES Peak Rewards program. You'll earn participation incentives while helping to reduce electric usage. Learn more and sign up at les.com/peak rewards.
This is Megan Walker from Nebraska Track and Field. Some kids wish for a family dog. Others wish for a family. Last month, over 100 kids needed a foster family and home. A gift to Cedars makes an immediate impact on Lincoln's kids. On Give to Lincoln Day, Wednesday, May 24th, your gift goes even further. Go to givetolincoln.com to make your gift to Cedars and support Lincoln's kids today.
More of the Sunday Rewind is coming your way next.
60% of the time, it works every time.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
And speaking of quotes from movies, welcome back to Husker Rewind. That's Tom Stevens and Mike Melby. Huge thanks to Nebraska assistant baseball coach Lance Harvell jumping on with us at the conclusion of the regular season as they get ready to face Rutgers in the Big Ten tournament. In case you did not catch the end of the last segment, Nebraska softball season is over. They fell to Oklahoma State today 5-2. They led 2-1 heading to the 7th. They were 2 outs away with that 2-1 lead, and then a 2-run double, I believe, and then an error, and kind of the wheels came off a little bit in the bottom of the 7th, and that was that. And so Nebraska falls 5-2. Their season is over, 36-22. One of the best columnists, I think, that any of us could ever read. He's been around for a long time, always has great articles, and he wrote another one that's in the Omaha World Herald today. Tom Chattel had a...
We should get him on the show, by the way.
We got to.
We got to get him on the show.
But he talks about conference realignment. Him and Admiral Ted Carter had one heck of a conversation. I believe Chattel mentioned that he spent over 2 hours having a conversation with him, and a lot more of that conversation is going to come out next week in a column, but he wanted to focus on conference realignment. And it's astounding to me that it's taken this long to get to the point where the Pac-12, the Big 12, or the ACC gets blown up. I actually thought that when it was announced USC and UCLA were joining the Big Ten, I thought within 90 days, one of those 3 conferences was going to be done. But now that's kind of the rumblings, is that there's 7 teams in the ACC that won out.
But doesn't it feel like it's the Big Ten, the SEC, and everybody else?
Well, it doesn't feel like it. It is.
It is. I mean, you're talking about $55 million per school. in the Big Ten, something similar in the SEC, and it's always the school that signs the newest contract. The next time the SEC signs their next contract, it'll probably be $100 million a school.
But that's the whole thing. It's $55 million this year.
Right.
The new TV deal that the Big Ten just signed, it's over $100 million a year for each Big Ten.
Yeah, it's
member.
crazy. It's crazy.
That starts next year.
Yeah, and you wonder. The thing that I got out of it is Ted Carter says realignment is coming soon, and one of the points that he makes is scheduling and NIL is going to change the way college football is built. Let's face it, it's going to be more of an NFL style. You could see 48 teams from the Big Ten, the SEC, and, then you cherry pick the Notre Dames and the Clemsons and the Florida States, and maybe you get them. The thing also that I got out of this article is, if you could cherry pick Florida State and Clemson and a few others from the ACC, that conference crumbles. And then you get Notre Dame because they have nowhere else to go.
Well, and the TV deal that Notre Dame has right now, they get $22 million or whatever per season. They're asking for $75 million. And there's speculation that behind the scenes, there's been a little bit of work done by the new Big Ten commissioner. I can't remember his name right now. He was a big TV guy, but
Petite or something like that.
Yeah. But that they're like, well, maybe we just work a deal where it's Big Ten and Notre Dame and NBC, and we'll all just, try to make it all a big happy family. But to try to get Notre Dame more money. And that's the other thing too. If you're Notre Dame, I get it. You're Notre Dame. You want to be Notre Dame and you want to be independent. And you want to do your own thing. At the end of the day, though, schools that have that much stubbornness, I think back to, textbooks. You have, stores that, sell textbooks, and you have, or just trade books, novels, etc. Well, now all the books are online. So if you don't change with the times, then, and I think we're getting really close to that tipping point in college football specifically, that Notre Dame needs to say, you know what, we are still Notre Dame, but we're now Notre Dame and we're in the Big Ten.
Right.
Because there's going to be over $100 million, $25 million a year is what they're going to walk away from if they just simply sign the same deal that they're trying to get with NBC.
Even $75 million, it's not going to match what the Big Ten is going to get.
That's the point.
And they're Notre Dame, so why wouldn't you just jump on board? And who knows? Will NBC even want to pay a school like Notre Dame, one of the probably still the brand in college football? Even when you're talking about Alabama, it's the brand. It's not as successful as a program. I'm not arguing Notre Dame's better than Alabama, no way, or Georgia. But their brand is worth a lot of money, and that's why the Big Ten wants Notre Dame so badly in the conference. Tony Petitti, I believe, is the name of the new commissioner of the Big Ten, and he comes from, I believe, CBS. And it's interesting. You used to hire a commissioner based on the academics or what they were able to bring as far as their relationship with the NCAA. Now it's all about what can you do for us in a TV deal?
Yeah.
And that's where Tony Petitti has the background. And the Big Ten, it's interesting that, to me, this quote really stuck out from Nebraska's president. I think Big Ten football, through the chancellors and the presidents, has made the decision to try to be national. And it sounds like they're in favor of that. Get national, and they've done that really with the additions of USC and UCLA, and I think reaching out, I don't think they're done. That if you could somehow break up the ACC. Now, figure the ACC, though, if you walk away, they make it very difficult to walk away from your conference now because you have to give back money to the rest of the league. And I've heard the figure $110 million.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's $110 million.
That if you walk away, even if you're Florida State, or it doesn't matter. And I guess over the long haul, it's probably worth it. Write a check for $110 million and then know that you're going to get $100 million a year from the league that you're joining. It's going to take a while. It took Nebraska a few years to get their full, and I believe at the time when Nebraska joined the Big Ten, it was like 20-some million a year. And it took them a while to get their full allotment.
Well, but the TV deal is for 14 teams, and there's like an asterisk. If Notre Dame joins, then the deal is already built in for Notre Dame becoming the 15th member of the Big Ten. I don't know. I'd never read anything about the contract that the Big Ten signed, the new media deal that's going to provide the teams with over $100 million.
Yeah.
What it's going to happen if the Big Ten all of a sudden becomes a 24-team conference. And, that entire TV deal is going to have to get ripped up, and the $100 million a year.
Ted Carter thinks that's going to happen. I mean, not maybe necessarily that, but change, realignment is going to happen. He's in all these meetings. Realignment is going to happen. And I think he believes that you're going to see a 48-team super conference between the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC happening very soon.
It may
The
turn
Big
into
10,
that. Yeah, I mean,
Big 12.
you're going to cherry pick a couple of schools from the Pac-12, cherry pick a couple of schools from the Big 12. And
do you like it? Do you think it's good for college football?
I don't know. I think it's inevitable. But at the same time, the schools that make all the money have the best opportunity to win, yet all the schools in the Big Ten have always made more money the last 10 years than all the teams in the SEC, but the SEC wins all the national titles.
Yeah.
So, and that's where NIL comes in, though, where you've got the ability to, take a guy that is going to go to Alabama and you get him to come to Nebraska because the deal's sweeter.
Yeah. And $100 million allows you to, I know it does, the
school,
money doesn't come from the school. It comes from obviously the people who give, the collectives who give to the school, but still it's always nice to have money rather than not have money.
Oh, exactly.
And Nebraska is definitely one of the haves and not one of the have-nots. It makes me think back to 2011 when Tom Osborne and Harvey Perlman were trying to get Nebraska out of the Big 12. And they did it in a matter of a few days. Tom Osborne was able to get Nebraska. I think it was mostly Tom Osborne that got Nebraska to the Big Ten. And I don't love the conference. I've tried to get used to the conference. I don't know that Nebraska necessarily fits in as well as they did in the Big 8 or the Big 12. But it's certainly where the money is. And financially, it's the right way to go. And you're closer probably to a 14 playoff or a 12-team playoff where we're headed by being in the Big 10 than you are in the Big 12.
Yeah.
So it's been good overall. And it feels like the arms race is about TV contracts. And Nebraska is going to win that arms race by being in the Big 10.
Well, and off the Sutter Heyman text line, Dwayne asks, this is from Dwayne, what I don't understand is if we go to two super conferences of the SEC and Big 10, essentially, then you would divide all of the other teams into subconferences or regional groupings. How is that any different than what we currently have other than the television contracting? It sounds like we're doing a lot of dancing, but we're just not moving very far around the dance floor.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's an NFL style model. You get rid of the teams that don't draw TV ratings and you keep the teams that do. And Nebraska, as we all know, they're always top 10, even, the last 20 years when they have not been good at college football at all. They get on TV and Nebraska fans watch. Their games always rank in the top 20, among the top 20, if they play Michigan or Ohio State or whoever. Even some of the lesser games are highly ranked. That Northwestern game from last year was one of the top watched games in college football, especially early in the season. And I guess that's how you can almost rate teams based on that. Not so much how much they win, but how many dollars do they draw to your conference. And Nebraska has been a disappointment as far as wins. There's no doubt about that. But they still rank very high when it comes to TV rankings. So
that they do. Nebraska this past week lost out for sure. They found out that Dylan Raiola was going to go to Georgia.
Yeah.
And then less than a week later, they got a commitment from Bellevue West quarterback Daniel Kalen. And I think we ought to maybe we continue the conference realignment, but I also think we ought to talk a little Daniel Kalen recruitment.
I do. I want to ask this question, and maybe you can react on the Starter Heyman text line or the Honda of Lincoln hotline, 464-5685. He's the face of the 2024 class. We thought it was going to be Dylan Raiola. And now that face, it's always the quarterback, right? Because he helps recruit the rest of the team. And there's a couple wide receivers at Bellevue West that Nebraska would really like to help or to have. And Daniel Kalen could certainly be a big part of getting them to Lincoln. Is he a good face for the program? Let's have that discussion. I think he's certainly a good player. Is he the right face for the 2024 class? We'll talk about it next. Mike Melby, Tom Stevens, Husker Rewind, more of it on the way.
At first, I was really nervous and intimidated to buy a ring. I wasn't sure what I was getting into.
My experience at Starter Heyman was very easy. I felt like I walked out of Starter Heyman with the ring that was going to make her go wow and say yes.
I love my ring. It is so beautiful.
I absolutely love my ring. I get compliments on it all the time. I always tell them Starter Heyman.
Yeah, we would definitely recommend Starter Heyman.
Yeah, it was great.
We're definitely coming back.
Sure.
Sauter Heyman Jewelers, Lincoln and Grand Island. SauterHeyman.com.
Hey, moms and dads, bring the whole crew to a Salt Dogs baseball game and unleash the fun. Visit Haymarket Park all summer for Fireworks Fridays, Souvenir Saturdays, Sunday Family Fun Days, and more. With 50 home games, even weekdays can be unforgettable. Planning an event? Make it a home run with group discounts. When you need an outing the whole family will enjoy, unleash the fun with the Salt Dogs. Call 402-474-2255 or visit saltdogs.com for tickets.
Early break with Sip and Jake.
McMurphy has Nebraska in the Las Vegas Bowl. That would be incredible. That would be absolutely amazing. Here's when the Vegas Bowl is. It's before Christmas. It is so easy to get to Las Vegas for Nebraska fans. There's now a direct flight from Lincoln via Redway, the new at Lincoln Airport. Omaha has direct flight. Grand Island has direct flights to Vegas.
It would be flooded with Nebraska.
It would be awesome.
Early break with Sip and Jake from 6 to 8 every weekday morning.
Start your Sundays off right with Jeff and Nicole Essink on Fitness Fanatics. Jeff and Nicole discuss health and wellness, how to achieve fitness goals, and more through the life of gym owners and gym goers. It's Fitness Fanatics from 9 to 11 a.m. on Sundays on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
This is the Sunday Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
KNTK Lincoln, 93.7 The Ticket, Ticket FM. Husker Rewind, Mike Melby, Tom Stevens. Nebraska got its quarterback. Probably wasn't the one that most Nebraska fans wanted. Dylan Raiola, the number one recruit for the 2020 class, of course, chose Georgia. So Nebraska had to go back out there and find their guy for the 2024 class. They were lucky to get Daniel Kalen and that he was committed already to Missouri. But he is a Nebraska kid, a Bellevue West kid, threw for over 3,100 yards, 36 TDs. It seems on paper like a very good get. If you've watched his video, the guy certainly has great pocket awareness, a very strong arm. Is he Dylan Raiola? No, he's not. But in some ways, and I'm not just blowing smoke, it might be better to get the Nebraska kid to mark your first recruiting class, your first big recruiting class. I know they've already had their first one, but this is the first. This is their first full recruiting class. And you get the Nebraska kid, and I think they're getting a really good player in Daniel Kalen. I mean, those numbers are significant. 36 touchdowns, 3,100 yards. He's not a runner. He's not an Adrian Martinez type runner, but he's a good athlete who can run. And by the way, Dylan Raiola was not a runner either. He was a guy he was a really good athlete who could move and run, but he was more like Casey Thompson, that he would move in the pocket to still throw. It feels like Kalen's one of those guys that moves. His mobility is designed to still throw.
Well, and his high school coach told him after his sophomore year, I don't care if you don't throw a pass in the offseason. Get more athletic. Learn how to run better. Learn how to get your change of direction perfected and improve your change of direction when you're running. And then learn how to throw with the football on the run more often. And really challenged him to do that going into last season, which he obviously had a ton of improvements. The one thing, too, about Daniel Kalen in last season, he threw 7 interceptions for the entire year. He threw 5 of them in the first 3 games. So for the remainder of the season, he only had 2 picks, and his head coach.
Wait a minute, a quarterback got better.
Well,
but coming to Nebraska?
His head coach said, I told him, stop taking chances. And the thing is, he has the Brett Favre arm strength,
gunslinger mentality,
and he had that mentality, and then he changed it 3 games into the season last year in his junior year and cut the interceptions down to 2 over the course of the last 6 or 7 games. And they were talking about this week was, I believe it was Thursday, Ed Foley and Marcus Satterfield were at Bellevue West. And state track's going on, and you've got, everybody at Burke, and they're all watching the state tournament or the state track and field meet. And instead, you've got Marcus Satterfield and Ed Foley at Bellevue West, and Danny Kalen had an opportunity to throw for him. They needed to see the workout. They needed to see what he could do. They see the numbers. They've seen some film. And his two best receivers that you're talking about, what is it, Isaiah McMorris and Davion Hall?
Yep.
They were at the track meet competing. So they had some, not the two best receivers on the team from Bellevue West, catching some balls. And lo and behold, in that workout, he's throwing the ball on a dime. And evidently his nickname within the school and the football program is Danny Dimes, or Daniel Dimes, because he's just so accurate. And a couple of them went through the hands of the receivers he was throwing to and like smacked the guys in the face.
Right.
And the head coach talked about how he was laughing. It was just kind of funny, but he's that kind of a talent with that much arm strength. And if you're that accurate, you have that kind of arm strength. We would have taken Dylan Raiola. I get it, but man, I don't know that this is.
I don't think he's a project. He's not a project either. I mean, they lost Zane Flores last year to Oklahoma State, who was a good prospect, but this guy's better. I think he's better. He's better.
Agree.
I think he's better than Zane Flores. Obviously the best quarterback in Nebraska high school history is Eric Crouch, and you can't really debate that for very long. But Nebraska used to take, when I was growing up, they always took a Nebraska kid at quarterback, and usually on scholarship, whether it was a Craig Sundberg or whoever might have been. There was always Jerry Godowski. Oh, my favorite, Grand Island or Fremont kid, who didn't play until late in his career. By the way, Jerry Godowski in this era of college football would have transferred. I mean, he would have transferred, but he had to wait, and then had that great senior year.
Yep.
And that's what's happening in college football these days. Is it's just impossible to hold on to both a Jeff Sims and a Casey Thompson, two starters. You're just not. In Nebraska used to have Tommy Frazier and Brooke Behringer. That era of college football ain't happening anymore. It's just not. A Brooke Behringer in this era would have transferred. He just would have. But it's nice to have the face of the 2024 class. And he feels like a guy, and Sam McEwen mentioned this, that wants to recruit for Nebraska. He mentioned Devon Hall and Isaiah McMorris, the wide receivers at Bellevue West. I think that he could probably get those guys to come to Nebraska. He had offers from Colorado, North Carolina, Michigan State, Missouri, was committed to Missouri. And of course, why wouldn't you if you think that Dylan Raiola is coming to Nebraska?
Well, and that's the whole thing. The way this whole story played out, I found it really interesting. A few talking heads were, oh my gosh, Matt Rule sucks at recruiting. How could he let Kalen get away? And for those that don't know, the article is out there. I read it earlier today. The recruitment of Daniel Kalen went like this. The head coach asked Matt Rule, how are you recruiting Daniel Kalen and Dylan Raiola? And Matt Rule told him, I believe this was back in January, that they have they have another player that they're interested in. He never mentioned the name, and that is their main focus. However, if that falls through, then they are going to be recruiting Danny Kalen very, very hard. They're going to do everything they can to get him to come to Nebraska. Back in the middle of March, there were a lot of people that were predicting Dylan Raiola was about to commit to Nebraska. It does not happen. And during that time, Daniel Kalen committed to Missouri because all that smoke was around that Raiola was going to commit to Nebraska, which means he wasn't going to, have the opportunity to play here, even though that's his, obviously with his commitment video, it's home. That's where he wants to play. He's a huge Nebraska fan as well. And now the way it all plays out, Monday, Raiola says, go Bulldogs. And then Thursday, you got Daniel Kalen throwing the ball for Marcus Satterfield.
Yeah.
And then obviously Friday, Saturday with the decommit to Missouri and commitment to Nebraska on Saturday.
Kalen mentioned that one of the first calls that, and I don't know if it's true, but I accept that it's true because he said it's true. One of the first calls that Matt Rule made was to Daniel Kalen. And that was at the point where they thought maybe we have a shot at Dylan Raiola. But this guy would be a pretty good backup option because we really like him. Smart move by Matt Rule. I mean, he feels like a guy that always has his ducks in a row. Like he has a plan, then he has a backup plan. He has a backup plan to the backup plan. You have to in college football, and especially at the quarterback position. One of the first calls I think that Matt Rule made was Jeff Sims. He had the Collins connection at Georgia Tech, got Jeff Sims, and as soon as it looked like Sims was going to be the starter and Casey Thompson wasn't going to get through spring, and he had the shoulder injury, he saw the writing on the wall. He went to Florida Atlantic, and you can't blame a guy for that. I wonder, even had Dylan Raiola committed to Nebraska, would he be able to or be willing to wait behind Jeff Sims even 1 year? Jeff Sims has 2 years at Nebraska, and maybe he's a one and done. He certainly has the skill.
If he lights the world on fire and is, looking at a possible second, third, or fourth round draft pick in next year's NFL draft, again, he's going to have to set the world on fire to do it, but he could jump.
But here's the thing. I don't think it's over even with Dylan Raiola. I mean, we always think it's over, but was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? Obviously. I know that the Germans didn't bomb Pearl Harbor.
1941. Right. Watch the movie, kids.
Right. And every time I mention that, Tom, that the Germans didn't bomb Pearl Harbor. I know that. It's a movie quote. But it's never over in recruiting. Consider this. Raiola is the number one recruit in 2024. Georgia also signed the 12th best quarterback, I believe, or 12th best player in the country, another quarterback.
Yeah.
There's going to be major competition for Dylan Raiola. And maybe he is a can't miss prospect, and it works out for him right away. But there have been a few that have gone to Georgia and elsewhere, and they didn't always work out.
Is he Trevor Lawrence or is he Quentin Ewers?
Right.
That's the question. You don't know.
And all I'm saying is, guys, it feels like most teams are getting their prospects, their starting quarterbacks, out of the transfer portal. And you have the Georgias and the Alabamas that get the best of the best, and fine. They get the best. But Nebraska is probably going to live a lot of the time out of the transfer portal. And Jeff Sims is here. I'm not sure that Raiola would have been able to wait even 1 year behind even a Jeff Sims. I'm not sure he would have, because the expectation is, hey, I'm the number one player in the country. I'm the starter. And I think there would have been a lot of pressure on a Matt Rule to start Dylan Raiola, regardless of where he is in his development in his freshman year.
At the same time, though, I mean, who's to say that Dylan Raiola doesn't beat out Jeff Sims?
That it's very possible.
So,
but sometimes when you get the marquee guy in a class, there's so much pressure to play that guy, even if they're not ready. Maybe I'm drinking the roulette and we're trying to find, rose-colored glasses. I don't know. I just think that it's Raiola. There would have been a lot of pressure associated with him. His uncle's the offensive line coach. His dad was a Hall of Famer here. And I'm not saying it wouldn't have worked out, but this might work out better. It may not. Recruiting, as we've found so many different times, it's just hard to judge how good a guy is going to be.
Yeah, but Daniel Kaelin coming into the fold, you've got a young man that, unless he's absolutely spectacular after 3 years at Nebraska, and would make a jump to the NFL, he's a guy that you may have your starter for the next 4 years after Jeff Sims, because the other thing is that it's been mentioned, and I want to say even his head coach mentioned it at his Bellevue West head coach. If Jeff Sims is here for 2 years, it's a perfect situation for Daniel Kaelin, because it gives him an opportunity.
See, it makes more sense than Raiola
to redshirt, to get stronger, to work on his footwork and his running ability, his change of direction, and all the little things that he doesn't do as good as he will at some point.
And that's where I was kind of going with Daniel Kaelin. You kind of see him more as a developmental quarterback, as opposed to Raiola, the number one recruit. There's a lot of pressure there to just, put him on the field as quickly as you possibly can. And I think there's a danger to that sometimes. Jeff Sims has played a lot of college football, and he's probably more prepared, even as crazy as it sounds, than Dylan Raiola.
Yeah, and let me ask you this, because we're talking about quarterbacks. Nebraska only has 3 on scholarship: Chubba Purdy and Heinrich Hartberg. Other than Jeff Sims, Logan Smothers is still in the portal.
I'd go get him in a heartbeat.
He is not chosen another school. Now, it's not that we go get him. It's if he's out looking, trying to find a school where It's going to fit his skill set. It's going to be a place where he can go in and compete for a
probably not going to be
starting
a Power
job.
5 school.
And it may not be. And if that's the whole thing. And Coach Rule said, hey, the window is open. The door is open for both him and Casey Thompson, who at the time had been linked to FAU but had not committed to him yet. Obviously, he has now. But is Logan Smothers a guy that Nebraska needs, or
he's insurance?
Do they need another quarterback out of the portal?
I don't think that they need Smothers, but he's familiar with the coaching staff, obviously. I think he's familiar with Nebraska at a high level. I think you could he fits the running style that they seem to want, at least for now. I don't know if they will for the long haul, but he's a very good runner. They like that about Heinrich Harburg. They like about Chubba Purdy. They like that about him. And they've got athletes. Jeff Sims runs a 4.4. So it seems, at least initially, they're into the dual threat guy. Smothers is more that than a pro style guy. I don't think he's a starter, but if you get Jeff Sims hurt, and Nebraska always gets their starter hurt every year since the last 10 years, I don't think they've made it through a season. When was the last time they made it through a season with a starter not getting hurt? Maybe a Tommy one year.
Tommy Armstrong, I think, made it through an entire year.
But he was always banged up, but everybody's banged up. I would say, get him an NIL deal, get him $40,000 a year, whatever, because he's not going Power 5. If anything, he's probably looking for a starting job, but he was going to have to do it at the FCS level. So why?
I don't know about that. I mean, I would think he could play in the AAC.
Maybe, and maybe he's willing to do that. Could he get a 40? Could he get a NIL deal?
That's the other thing.
As good as Nebraska could offer. I don't know what he's thinking, and he might be just ready to move on. He's a kid from Alabama, but his dad was his coach in high school. He's a really smart kid. The knock on Logan Smothers has always been he doesn't have the big arm. He just doesn't have,
and he's not overly accurate either.
And he's not very accurate. But Nebraska's had that problem for a long, long time.
Yeah.
So, but he's a guy that would provide insurance. And right now, you've got 3 scholarship quarterbacks. So it might be.
That's what I mean. That's the interesting thing is so if Logan Smothers does not, and you're Coach Matt Rule, do you go to the portal and get another quarterback?
I'd probably go to the portal and get Smothers. Because that's where he is right now.
There you go.
I probably would, because you've got your starter. You've already got your starter. You're just looking for insurance. You're looking for a guy that can give you snaps if your starter goes down. And, then he's probably back on the bench the very next week as soon as Jeff Sims is healthy. Or, he's probably not even in the conversation after Sims. It's probably Harburg, or it's probably Purdy. You're just looking for 4. I think most rosters are looking for 4 quarterbacks.
Yeah, I would agree. And the one thing I heard, the back half of spring, Chubba Purdy made a move. Like he started to understand the offense better, because it's new, terminology's new, et cetera. But what we were told, and I actually believe it was Matt Rule that made the comment, or Marcus Satterfield, one of the two, that it slowed down for him. And all of a sudden he started playing, not thinking. And you could see why he was a 4-star, why he was a guy that was committed to Florida State, why and played at Florida State. So I know Heinrich Harburg had all the pub through most of the spring, but when push comes to shove, when we kick things off up in Minneapolis in August, I think Chubba is going to be the number 2.
If I were in a line in Vegas, betting on who the backup quarterback will be for Nebraska, I would go with Harburg. I really just would. I saw heard Rule talk about the quarterbacks just over the last few days. I can't remember who he was talking to. He does a lot of interviews, and God bless him for that. I mean, he's not afraid to talk. And a lot of it was about Harburg. He didn't mention it was Jeff Sims first, Harburg second. And so that's kind of the way I see it at this point. He thinks there's big potential with Harburg and his arm. There's been conversation. He's one of the faster guys. They put the GPS on the guys, and apparently he ranked as one of the top 5 fastest guys on this team. So the conversation is, well, is he a tight end? Because he's 6'5", 210, 220, that type of thing. I think they like him as a quarterback, and they like him as a thrower. But again, the portal conversation, if you're going to go to the portal, you're not going to get a guy a great guy because you already have your starter. So who wants to come in and compete for, against a guy like Jeff Sims, who's probably going to be the starter? So you're going to get a guy like a Smothers, who's basically insurance. That's just the way I see it. But I think you do have to go to the portal and get another guy. I just don't think 3 scholarship guys is enough.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. It really will.
Let's talk to Evan Bland about some of these things that we've been talking about.
That's a good idea.
He covers Nebraska football for the Omaha World Herald. He's written about Daniel Kalen, the quarterback from Bellevue West, and all these topics that we've been talking about.
And he knows way more than we do. So.
And he also knows Husker baseball, so we can talk Husker baseball with him as well. Evan Bland, Omaha World Herald, is up next.
You've driven by GE Landscape Supply countless times, likely without even knowing, at 6701 Cornhusker Highway. Now it's time to stop in. GE Landscape Supply sells to homeowners and contractors with a vast selection of landscaping and construction materials. They sell in bulk to save you money, and you can buy anything from a 5-gallon bucket to a semi-load. And don't forget, they deliver anywhere. Stop by 6701 Cornhusker Highway from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday, and 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturdays. Go to GELandscapesupply.com for more info, or call 402-467-1627.
This is Brian at Midwest Bank, and we've been proudly serving clients in the Lincoln community since 2008, and we're excited to open a second location in January 2024 at 70th and Pioneers Boulevard. Our new branch will provide all the convenient services you're looking for in a bank, along with the friendly staff we're known for. Whether you're starting a business or expanding your business, our team is here for you. Your community, your bank, Midwest Bank. Find out more at midwestbank.com, member FDIC.
Nebco is hiring CDL drivers for Ready Mix Concrete, Husker Concrete, and Beatrice Concrete. Nebco offers great pay, medical, and retirement benefits, paid time off, and we pay for CDL training. Apply today to earn an average total compensation of $50,000 to $60,000 your first year driving. From Nebco's beginnings in 1908, it's the employees that have formed the company's solid foundation. Start your career today. Visit nebcoinc.com. That's NEBCOINC.com.
When we're looking out for a homeowner, we're always keeping their budget in mind. We try to maximize things that are important to them.
Bob Benish is the founder and president of Aspen Builders, online at aspenbuildersinc.com.
So we really try to maximize the size, because 5 years from now, you can't just make your house bigger. The one thing I can tell you is that most builders in Lincoln, we all are about the same price. The difference comes in the products that we put in and the way we put in those products.
The old saying, you get what you pay for, is pretty accurate when you're building a home. If you put nicer windows in and you put nicer cabinets, it's going to cost a little bit more. If those things are important to you, then you want to do it. We can try to incorporate in your floor plan and get a house that you're going to be happy with.
Make your dream home a reality and call Aspen Builders at 423-6811. Online at aspenbuildersinc.com. Your home is waiting at Aspen Builders.
Papa, why can't we telegraph while riding a horse?
Son, there ain't no one to blame but Jeffro. He was riding old Betsy the Stallion, tip-tapping away at his telegraph, when blam, ran right into the side of the saloon.
Well, if Jeffro can't do it, neither should you. Don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
When you're high, you feel different. You think different, you talk different, you draw different, you listen to music different, but you probably knew that. Problem is, you also drive different, and not in a good way. That's why driving high is illegal everywhere. So if you're high, just don't drive. Make a plan to get a sober ride. Because if you feel different, you drive different. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Back to the Sunday Rewind with Tom and Mike.
That's old school.
Yeah?
No school like the old school.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back. Husker Rewind every Sunday, 5 to 7. Mike Melby there. Tom Stevens here. As we bring in Evan Bland, our good friend from the Omaha World Herald. Haven't talked to him in a while, but big story on Nebraska football today. So we go to the big guns. Evan, hi. How are you? How are things?
Hey,
Hey, doing well. Happy Sunday, guys.
Yeah, you too. Daniel Kalen commits, of course, after Nebraska didn't get Dylan Raiola, who went to Georgia. Not a big surprise there, but maybe a bigger surprise that Kalen decommits from Missouri and ends up at Nebraska. Were you surprised?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, that was the big question. Like, was when you looked at how Matt Rule and the staff approached the quarterback position, it was Dylan Raiola and it was Daniel Kalen, and that was pretty much all that they put out, at least publicly, in terms of 2024 offers. And so, you know, you're in a tight spot, obviously, where you're recruiting Raiola. You have to see that thing through to the end, given his ability and the connections, the ties that you have. So you know, they had to kind of manage Kalen on the back end and say, hey, you know, we like you, but we can't take your commitment at this time. And so, you know, he had that right to go ahead and pursue Missouri, and that's what happened. But yeah, I think that was sort of the question, was how set was he on the Tigers when Nebraska circled back around and said, hey, you know, we're still interested if you are. And as it turns out, he was pretty interested. I mean, he decommits, you know, within days of the Raiola news, and then jumps aboard here this weekend into Nebraska's class. And it's a sort of a unique situation where it kind of felt like maybe this was Zane Flores again, where you lose out on a touted in-state quarterback or prospect. But in this case, Matt Rule and company were able to recoup him, and it turns into sort of one of those rare deals where you sign an impact high school quarterback in late May, right? Typically those guys, the high threes, low 4-stars, whatever, those guys commit early in the spring, and then they become peer recruiters and all the rest. So for Nebraska to land him at this point to sort of, you know, have a contingency plan in place for Raiola, that was a big deal, and kudos for everybody and coming together.
Evan Bland from the Omaha World Herald joining us here on the Husker Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket. Evan, in the case of Dylan Raiola, I saw he tweeted out something, I'm going to help recruit the best guys and really fill out this recruiting class. You know, Daniel Kalen is going to do that as well. By the way, he has a couple of his current teammates that I know Coach Rule and Marcus Satterfield and the staff are pretty excited about. Where else do you think he can have an impact? One of the big names that's on the board for Nebraska is Brandon Baker. And what do you know about any of the relationship that Baker may have with Daniel Kalen?
I mean, I guess I don't know a ton about their personal connections, and they may have some. I know in talking with Kalen before, I mean, he's a personable guy. Like, you think about sort of the intangibles that you want in a quarterback, a guy that, can command a huddle and command a team and be a leader and all that. I think he has those abilities. And in a lot of ways, like you mentioned with his Bellevue West teammates, he's got a leg up on handling elite playmakers and working with guys like that. I mean, Isaiah McMorris and David Hall are both guys who Nebraska wants to get on campus for official visits and who have major Power 5 offers around the country. So it doesn't hurt to have their high school quarterback kind of in their ear and saying, hey, let's take this thing another 3 or 4 years into the future in Lincoln. So, I think Kalen is also one of those guys. You think about his recruiting process. I believe it was Florida State was his first offer like a year and a half ago. And so this is somebody who's been to the camp circuits, who's seen other top prospects. He's been to Nebraska and a number of other places a lot of times. And you can bet that these guys all talk to each other. I think the power of a guy like that certainly extends to the other skill players. It extends to the offensive linemen that may want to come in. And then again, when you have the personality that Kalen has, I think that helps as well. So we'll see, how much this produces direct recruits and results in terms of guys that they're able to bring into the class. But I think if nothing else, man, it gives some of those other players that are considering Nebraska another reason to do so. And if that's sort of the thing that tips the scales in getting a guy onto campus because, hey, Daniel Kalen's here, let's give it a look. Maybe that's the sort of thing that can put Nebraska over the top with a couple prospects.
He's Evan Bland of the Omaha World Herald, our guest. Sam wrote it, your cohort. Sam McEwitt of the Omaha World Herald wrote. He's not a guy that necessarily is going to run for 500 yards in a given year. But Raiola was kind of that as well. But yet he is athletic. Is there a quarterback that maybe Nebraska has had before or that you would compare him to?
Well, I mean, he does. you look at his high school film and his numbers, like he's definitely a pass first guy. So I don't know, you probably have to go back a little ways. Like you think about, he's not Tommy Armstrong. He's not, he's not Tanner Lee. I don't think, he doesn't have the feet of Adrian Martinez either. So it's kind of hard to say. I mean, I suppose in some ways you could kind of draw a few comparisons to Casey Thompson, where like he can run. That's not maybe his calling card, but he's got kind of the cerebral side of things, a deep understanding of the game, kind of a student of the game sort of guy. So maybe there's some of that. But I think too, his commitment is interesting because it signals, I think, the flexibility that Nebraska's offense is going to have under Matt Rule and Marcus Satterfield, because you think about Jeff Sims and his skill set as the guy who presumably will be their starter for the next couple of seasons, and how different that is from a guy like Kalen. And I think just their confidence in their ability to adjust the offense to say, okay, this guy can run, we're going to run an offense that suits that, versus, hey, Daniel Kalen's the starter. It's probably going to look a little bit different in terms of staying in the pocket and, being creative in different ways with what he's able to do. So I think it sort of just cements this idea that in the next 2 years, what we'll see with Jeff Sims at the helm may be different from what some of the other quarterbacks who take over after that could be under Matt Rule.
Evan Bland from the Omaha World Herald joining us here on the Husker Rewind on the Ticket. One of your other coworkers, Tom Chattel, wrote a very interesting article on college expansion within the Big Ten, within the SEC. The ACC goes away, possibly. I know you've read the article, and what are your thoughts on where college football is headed over the course of the next, say, 36 months?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. It's like, you remember in school when we talked about like Pangea and how it was like one supercontinent and then it broke up? I feel like this is sort of the opposite of that, where you've had all these little conferences and we're slowly kind of moving toward this super conference, maybe two super conferences. And yeah, I mean, what Nebraska President Ted Carter told Tom Chattel was he felt like there would be additional expansion maybe in the next 18 months, maybe not this summer like they added USC and UCLA last year. But yeah, I mean, I think you can envision a scenario where maybe you have a couple 24 team conferences, maybe the Big Ten and the SEC are those two conferences. The ACC sort of gets snapped up, picked apart maybe by those two. Same thing with the Pac-12 potentially. And it's just, yeah, man, there's so many different ways that you can go with it. Like, you talk about conference realignment. I mean, a lot of it comes down to the TV deals, but to me, I think the other thing that you're going to see in college athletics, and this is sort of the next big issue that's going to come out there, is what do you do about player compensation? Does NIL sort of morph or evolve further into what you would see from the NFL, where schools pay the players directly, where there are some sort of contracts that make it a little bit less unseemly when guys go in the transfer portal, maybe to bring a little bit more order to this thing. Does that come directly under the umbrella of the schools, or does that come directly under the umbrella of the conferences? So I think there's so many moving pieces. It's been this way, it seems like, for 15 or 20 years now. But yeah, it does seem like, based on the comments from Ted Carter, that the powers that be believe expansion's not over, and that we're sort of continuing toward this end game of a couple major conferences, at least as it pertains to football.
Evan Bland is our guest. It has become the haves and have-nots, and you can argue whether it's good for college football, but it does feel like it's probably going to be good for Nebraska, even if you don't like it, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's sort of the NIL discussion, where it's like they've got the fan base, they have the national brand, and so you kind of assumed that NIL would be a positive for Nebraska, and it's hard to say whether it has been or not. I mean, all you kind of hear are rumors and innuendo and anecdotes, because all the numbers are private. The players don't have to share. The donors, the collectives, they don't have to share that information. So you don't really know. And so I suppose that there's sort of an element of that where you just wonder how much of what we know to be assets for Nebraska, like the fan base, how much does that translate competitively speaking when you're talking about TV eyeballs, NIL, all the rest? I mean, it does seem that that's the case, but we don't know, man. Like this is just uncharted territory. If you would have said 5 years ago that donors could pay players over the table, that guys could freely transfer one time, that the redshirt rule would sort of morph into this 4-game thing, like you'd think it was an entirely different game. And so think about where we'll be in 5 more years. It's so hard to predict. I think you got to give credit to Nebraska's administration for being forward thinking and having a lot of contingencies in place, but it's just so hard to project even what things will look like in a year or two, let alone what it could be in 5 years. But you do, I think, got to credit Nebraska's brain trust, at least for putting, contingencies out there to try to adjust as you go.
Evan Bland joining us from the World Herald. Evan, Tom and I were having the discussion right before the end of the last segment where I asked Tom the question. We currently have 3 quarterbacks on scholarship. If Logan Smothers does not come back to Nebraska, he finds another school, do you think they need to go get another quarterback in the portal to have 4 on scholarship?
For next season?
For next season.
I mean, I don't know what options really would be out there at this point. Like the portal window is closed, so nobody, unless you're a grad transfer, is able to enter into that thing. And so at this point, you're talking about bringing in a guy who would be on campus for what, at most 2.5 months, 2 months before fall camp, and try to get them up to speed with the offense. I wonder how effective that would actually be. And I'm trying to go too based on what we heard from coaches all spring. And it's pretty clear Jeff Sims is going to be that guy as the starter. But Heinrich Harburg is probably one of the biggest risers of spring ball. Like you think back to before spring ball began, Heinrich Harburg was one of the first guys that spoke. And he took questions about, hey, would he be interested in moving to fullback or changing positions? And by the end of it, the discussion was, hey, he might be the number 2 on that depth chart. So, I think that says a lot for how far he was able to come. They love his running ability, of course. That's probably the most similar part of his game to Sims. And we'll see sort of on the throwing component, but he threw the heck out of the ball in high school at Kearney Catholic. So I think they feel good about him. And then, Purdy has been kind of hurt a little bit. He was somebody that they inherited as well. I think, Matt Rule has spoken well of him when he's broken down the quarterbacks in the past. So, I think you probably roll with those guys. You just wonder, man, like there's going to be some nerves because as we've seen, like the drop off at Nebraska and at most schools, when you go from your quarterback 1 to quarterback 2 can be pretty steep. And I think that would absolutely be the case with Nebraska, and that's pronounced by the fact that that Sims is going to run the ball, and guys get hurt when they run the ball. That's just sort of how it goes. So I think you probably do go in with the 3 scholarship quarterbacks. You probably cross your fingers a little bit. You hopefully you have a 4th guy who can maybe be an emergency sort of player in that situation. But I just don't know who you would add at this point unless you're adding a body just to add a body.
Well, and Matt Rule has said the door is open for a guy like Logan Smothers who could come back. Obviously, Sims is your starter, so it's not going to be attractive to a guy who thinks he's a starter to come to Nebraska, but maybe you could get a guy similar to Smothers to come as insurance.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. And as Matt Rule's made that clear, the door's open. I know that Smothers does have offers from other schools, the schools that are maybe more option-based or ground-based than what Nebraska is going to be. So, I mean, personally, I would be surprised if Logan Smothers returned to Nebraska. He just graduated, and he was a guy who committed like 2 years before he enrolled. So he was all in. I think a lot of people might argue that he stayed a year too long, that he could have had an opportunity a year earlier if he had entered the portal. I don't know. He may. You never know with some of these decisions. He could come back. I just get the sense that, he's put in his time here. I think you have to credit Matt Rule and his staff for being really honest with guys, which is why Casey Thompson left, which is why, Smothers is checking out the portal. I know Rule has said quarterback is a little bit different from a lot of other positions, and that he encourages those guys to check around and sort of assess what their value could be in the portal. So we don't know, but I do know that he does have other offers out there, and he's an Alabama kid who maybe wants to be closer to home and have more of a prominent role later in his college career. So we'll see how it plays out.
Evan Bland from the Omaha World Herald joining us here on 93.7 The Ticket on Husker Rewind. Will Bolt and the Nebraska baseball team figured some things out over the last 2 weekends of the regular season. They wind up 31-21-1. They're the 4 seed. They play Rutgers on Wednesday. What are your thoughts on how the season ended, and what do you think they're going to do in the Big Ten tournament?
Well, I mean, it ended pretty well. They won 5 of their last 6 league games. I think I probably have a couple takeaways from the last 2 weekends. One, it felt to me like the offense found itself a little bit, especially at the bottom of the order. You started seeing a lot more sacrifices. I believe they bunted more in the last 2 weekends than they did for the first 2 months of the season. So they got guys more involved. Dylan Carey's bunting more. Ben Columbus is a guy who's actually laid down some bunts. He had 3 in a game at one point. So I think they've sort of found a comfort level in what they're asking some of the guys toward the bottom of the lineup to do. And then, last weekend, there wasn't a ton on the line for Nebraska other than where they would seed in the tournament. So I thought what they were able to do was really positive. I mean, they limit the workload of their 2 starters, Emmett Olson and Jace Kaminska. They were able to give Bryce Matthews the entire weekend off as he battles back tightness. You would think he would be ready to roll. Gave a couple other position players, a breath for a game. So I think they're about as ready as you can be going into this thing. And the thing's wide open. If you look at the 8 teams that are in their last 10 games, it's, everybody's 5-5 or 4-6. Nobody's coming to Omaha on any kind of a hot streak. And, Maryland would be the number 1 seed, but their park, legitimately, they're in their ballpark. Their center field measures 358 feet to dead center, and that's a home run. That's part of the reason they've got over 100 blasts this year. They're coming to Charles Schwab Omaha. That's a place that's 410 to center. So I think Maryland's beatable. I think everybody's got sort of a fatal flaw, and so what I've been saying about why I think Nebraska could make a run is because they have the star power to match anybody that's there. I mean, with Bryce Matthews and Max Anderson swinging as well as they are, I think Gabe Swanson, with I believe 17 home runs this year, is a legitimate first-team All Big Ten outfielder as well. So they have the bats to get hot. Their pitching is set up well. It doesn't mean they will win it. Certainly, they've gone flat many times this season, but I do think when they're playing to their potential, that's as good as anybody else in the field. So I think that makes it worth watching, and it should be a pretty fun week.
Evan Bland of the Omaha World Herald. The Will Bolt conversation is kind of a weird one because they didn't make the Big Ten tournament last year, but the last Big Ten championship in any men's sport came from, as far as the Big Three are concerned, from Husker baseball a couple of years ago. So I don't think Will Bolt is in danger, but how would you grade this year and where he is as far as his job is concerned?
Oh, I mean, I think he's pretty safe at this point. If they had missed the Big Ten tournament, there would have been probably a little bit of rumblings. I don't know that anything would have happened or come from it. I mean, he's 2 years removed from being the Big Ten Coach of the Year and taking a team a game away from being in a super regional. Last year was a clunker. There's no doubt. I think part of the reason the staff would say why last year was so bad was because a lot of the players that they brought in were recruited during COVID, when it was based off of highlight videos and phone calls. And they, a lot of what they do is based on sort of personality and intangible stuff. And they felt like they didn't have a great feel maybe for what their roster was top to bottom. And so, this year, I think it's obviously there's been disappointments when you go 500 in the midweek. That's not what you're looking for. The pitching's been up and down. I think it's probably frustrating that when you have guys who have been putting up All-America numbers like Matthews and Anderson, that you don't have a better record than you do. So, there's probably some depth issues there that have held Nebraska back a little bit. But at the end of the day, you're a 4 seed in the tournament. You have to win that thing to go to a regional. They would tell you that they try and they openly talk about hosting a regional every year, which is a sky high standard that's really hard to meet. I mean, a Big Ten meets that every 4 or 5 years. So that's how rare that is for a Big Ten team to do. But, if you're giving it a letter grade, I don't know, maybe a C, but there's a chance for that to flip in the next week if they get hot and have a chance to, go from there. So I think it was a talented team. They would probably say they underachieved a little bit, but, it's not too late to if this is a final sort of cram here late, maybe you can get lucky and, come out on top with a better grade.
Evan, I'd love to say we'll have you back after Nebraska wins the Big Ten tournament, but we're taking Memorial Day weekend off. So we're not going to be here next week. So I guess we'll have you back after Nebraska wins their regional.
Yeah, when they're heading to a super in 2 weeks, let's talk about it.
Let's do it. We'll for sure have you back. Recruiting season is here. We're getting closer every week to football season. So we'll have things to talk about this summer, and we'll love to have you on.
Yeah, anytime, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thanks, Evan.
Evan Bland of the Omaha World Herald. Good stuff. This is a team that could get hot. I mean, it's ended much better than we thought it might, right? They've won 5 of their last 6. Will Bolt is safe.
Oh, yeah.
He's very safe. We thought if they didn't make the Big Ten tournament, that could be a problem because they didn't make it last year. Now they're a 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament. And who knows? They could get hot. I think there's one thing about this team. They have some confident dudes. I mean, Max Anderson's a confident dude. Bryce Matthews is a confident dude. They have guys that are very confident up and down their lineup and their experience this year. And then I think they just still believe. I wonder about the home field advantage. It was a good comment that Evan had. Maryland won the league, but now they're going to a field where home runs go to die in Schwab Field.
Yep.
I've seen some College World Series where 5 home runs were hit during the entire World
the first
Series.
year it was there.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And now they've hit more and more. But Nebraska might have an advantage or maybe not because they're a home run hitting team as well.
But when Nebraska hits home runs, they go 420 feet.
It's true.
So I want to circle back real quick because Kevin in Southwest Lincoln chimed in a couple of times on the Starter Heyman text line to put a bow on the quarterback discussion. He said he sat in the north end zone for the spring game, and Jeff Sims was far and away the best quarterback there. Purdy outplayed Harburg and looked very impressive running and throwing the ball, and decision-making was a lot better as well. And he is leaning towards Chubba being the guy to be number 2. And he also says, let's stick with the 3. Let Logan go somewhere else. I'm fine with that. So thanks to Kevin in Southwest Lincoln chiming in his thoughts on the quarterback battle here at Nebraska.
Let's take one more break and come back with our final segment. Mike Melby there, Tom Stevens here. It's Huskers Sunday Rewind.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 a.m, my phone rang. They said, I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action. Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Pastor Tom. Did you know there's a place kids can seek out help when they're away from home and something goes wrong? They find themselves in a difficult spot or even a dangerous situation. Maybe another child is bullying them or a stranger is following them. Perhaps on a date and things just go bad. In Lincoln, here's where they can find help. It's called Safe Place. Safe Place is a national program for children taking place in thousands of cities across the United States. The People Seeding Mission is sponsoring this program in our community and has set up a number of businesses, fire stations, schools, and nonprofits around the city to become safe locations where kids can seek out help. They just need to look for the big yellow sign that says Safe Place on it. Then go inside and ask for help. We will be quickly connected to them and ensure they make it back home or to whatever resources are needed. If you'd like to find out more about Safe Place and ways in which you can get involved, just go to pcmlincoln.org. Remember, when we all do a little, we change a lot.
If you came across someone struggling with hunger, how would you recognize them? By their clothes, their age, the way they speak? Would you notice a 16-year-old boy who got his first job,
not for extra spending money, but to help feed his little sisters?
or a mother who's in between jobs and sometimes goes to bed hungry so her kids can have dinner? Or a 14-year-old girl who signs up to every after-school activity, not to make friends, but just to get something to eat? Or a retiree who fell ill and had to choose
between getting medicine or groceries.
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. People you pass by every day but never knew were hungry. I am hungered in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 Food Banks Strong, and the Ad Council.
This is the Sunday Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back to the Husker Rewind. Final segment before we put a bow on it, and then I change mindsets, and Rebecca Pearson and I spend the next hour talking about racing on the finish line.
What's your mindset? I mean, you have a reset after this show is over, and you think differently for the racing show. Obviously, you're talking about racing and not football, basketball, baseball, Husker sports. But do you go into that show thinking in a different way?
Not really. It's one of those where I have a passion for sports, and I have a huge passion for racing.
Well, you know it inside and out.
So, but and that's the whole thing is, you just kind of
You're
roll
very
with
good on
stuff
that
like
show.
that.
I'm not
Thank
just
you.
blowing smoke. I'm not,
Appreciate it.
but I think that show is really good. And
Thank you.
You guys are going to take off.
Tonight is super cool. Good friend of mine, one of the most talented drivers. I think he lives in Waverly. Stu Snyder is going to join us on the show today. Stu is a guy that can wheel a sprint car, man. He is something else. Yeah, and I know we've got lined up. I know there's a couple other guys out at Eagle that race. I'm not going to throw them out right now until we get squared away and have everybody scheduled. But we're going to have local guys on. We're going to have national people on. We're efforting, as we like to say on radio, a midget driver by the name of Jade Avedizian. She's one of the most talented midget drivers there is. It's a great show, and we want to talk racing and involve everybody. So that's what we're going to build it up and get the listeners involved and all that. But I was thinking about, by the way, last segment here of Husker Rewind. I'm Mike Melby. That's Tom Stevens. When we get into the summer, our shows, that's where radio talk
Probably going to move
shows,
downtown as well.
Yeah, they get goofy. You hear these, well, let's rank the top 10 running backs all time. Let's do this. Let's do that. One thing I think would be fun to do is do a conference realignment draft. And
that would be interesting.
And I would like to do it to where maybe it's you and I as a
to how many teams?
Coach,
like top 50?
I would no. Let's do what they're talking about in that Tom Chattel article today, and say we're going to draft to 48 teams. So you currently have 14 in the Big Ten, and 12 in the SEC.
Right.
Well, we're going to draft. It's going to be 14 with Oklahoma and Texas next year. We're gonna fill out the remainder. There's 20 more teams that need to get drafted.
I love it.
And let's do a.
Would Nebraska be top 30 in your mind?
Well, they're already in the conference. That's the whole thing. Is all of the teams in the Big Ten and the SEC are already there. You're only drafting 20, so you got 20 rounds. Who you taking? I mean, is Clemson going to be the first one off the board, or is it going to be Miami, or could it be?
Clemson's got to be the first one off the board.
You would think they would be.
Clemson is the first one. I mean, who else at Florida State is obviously on the docket. Miami is there in the ACC.
And the other caveat is actually the Big Ten is at 16 teams starting next year, with UCLA and USC joining. So it'd be an 18-round draft.
We should definitely do that this summer. I got to mention, I'm going to Will Jeski's graduation party. He committed to Nebraska earlier this year. He was committed to Wichita State, switched his commitment to Nebraska. He got an academic scholarship. This is actually a great story. He studied like a madman and got like a 30-something on his ACTs, and now he's at Nebraska academically. So they're not using a scholarship on him, but he's a really good baseball player as well. So I'm heading to his party a little bit later on. So
congrats to him.
So congratulations to Will Jeski, and what he did to get on that roster is really incredible. It makes you think he's going to be really successful. where do you want to go from here before we head out? Nebraska softball falls to Oklahoma State, the 9th-ranked team in the country. They had a 2-1 lead in that game. Actually, a pretty good fighting chance to win today. They would have still had to play Oklahoma State again had they won. But it was tough luck in that they had that Wichita State game won yesterday. They lose it, but then they fight through the losers bracket. They beat Wichita State down to their last out. They come back, send it to extra innings, and win that game and make it to today. So congratulations to Rhonda Revelle and the Nebraska softball team. They fought hard, but their season is over.
Yeah, they did. They were up 2-1 going into the top of the 7th. They were technically the home team in that game, and they fall. They got one out to start the inning, but then couple of base hits, 2-run RBI, and then an error, and Oklahoma State plates 4 in the top of the 7th. Nebraska can't get a run home in the bottom.
I have a get off my lawn.
Cool.
The NBA.
Get off my lawn.
We're going to come down to, it's going to be the Denver Nuggets who deserve it. They were the number 1 team in the West, but they're already up 3-0. They're going to win that series. has anybody come back from 3-0 in the history of the NBA? I think
there has been a couple of teams,
a couple. But it's not going to happen with the LA Lakers. Denver's the number 1 seed, barely made the playoffs, did the Lakers, and it looked like they could have won a few games in that series, but they're not going to. I wanted the Lakers and the Celtics in the NBA Finals. It's going to be the Lakers and the Miami Heat.
You have no faith in your own team.
They're down 2-0.
I'm not a Boston
They're not
fan,
coming
and
back.
I'm rooting for Boston.
They lost the first 2 games at home.
Yeah, so?
So do you have a get off my lawn?
Me? Actually, no. The get off my lawn is to like every muscle in my body. I'm working on my deck and was digging some footings and all that stuff. Like my body can get off my own lawn because I am so sore today and I really shouldn't be. Like everything hurts. My calves are on fire and I don't get it. I guess that's what happens when you get old and out of shape. So
you're not old as far as you know.
Exactly.
We're both really old. We're almost 60. That's just tough to say out loud.
True.
We've known each other for a long, long time. But we're almost 60, but we're still alive. And some people said we wouldn't be by this time. So take that.
Exactly.
There you go. We'll be back with a show in 2 weeks. You're actually coming back next week to do the racing show, right?
Yeah, I think we're going to move the finish line to 5 o'clock next week. And I'm kind of confident we've got some really cool guests.
I'm going to eat and get really fat. And then in 2 weeks, I'll be probably 100 pounds heavier because that's really what I want to do this summer, play golf and eat. But we will be back in 2 weeks.
Well, you got a goal.
Well, yeah, that's right. The racing show, The Finish Line, is coming up next. Mike Melby and Rebecca Pearson. We are leaving.
You are.
I'm leaving.
I'm sitting right here.
Well, we're leaving this show. See ya. Bye.
See ya, Tommy.
Moms and dads, bring the whole crew to a Salt Dogs baseball game and unleash the fun. Visit Haymarket Park all summer for Fireworks Fridays.